So Siri is now also an app. It's a little logo on your home screen that once you open it, it'll look like you just opened a chatbot. So in here on the bottom right, you can start a new conversation. Beside it, there's a search bar where you can search the conversations you've already had. And on the top right, you can make this boring list slightly less boring by making it into a grid. Now watch this. Here's the Apple's press release from October the 4th, 2011. The day Siri was announced. They said Siri is, quote, an intelligent assistant that helps you get things done just by asking. Just by asking. Not an app, no window, no history, no new chat button. Just by asking. And 15 years later, we now have this glorious app. So we'll go through this app and we will judge whether or not this app is actually heading into the right direction or if Siri is actually improving and becoming more useful. But first, let's talk through a few numbers. Roughly 17% of iPhone users use Siri on a given day. And that figure comes from the analyst Gene Munster. And he pairs it with an interesting second figure. The average iPhone gets picked up and used around 100 times per day. So the assistant that's built into the most used object in your life gets looked onto around once a day, if that. Personally, for example, I stopped taking Siri seriously when back in 2015 or something, it sent a message to one of my friends where I asked it to send it to another friend just because I have a bit of an accent. And that is a really mundane example, but if you add up these mundane examples to all of us collectively, we all kind of stopped using Siri to its full potential and we boiled it down to 3 main features or something. We ask it to set a timer, we ask it for the weather, and we ask it to play music, or for reminders or writing down notes or calling someone. But Apple has spent this entire year trying to build a fix, or trying to make us take Siri slightly more seriously. So let me show you what this fix is like, because I think it's actually fascinating how this all got layered up. So this is Draftish. I make highly researched videos on design and culture. I look at things as they're being designed and then test them against their usability and other design factors and analyze that design and its impact on our everyday lives and culture. And I do that every couple weeks or something. So if that sounds good to you, then please consider subscribing so we can get this channel to its first 1,000 subscribers. I would really appreciate that. Thank you. So let's quickly get back to that 2011 press release. Apple's examples are all about not touching anything.
What we really want to do is just talk to our device. Ask a simple question. What's the weather going to be like today? And get a response. In fact, we don't want to be told how to talk to it. We want to talk to it any way we'd like. Someone else might ask, will it rain in Cupertino? Or is the weather going to get worse today? Or do I need an umbrella today? And your device, in this case your phone, will figure out what you mean and help you get what you want done.
You can ask it to remind you to call your mom when you get home. And it knows who mom is and it knows where home is. So the pitch is that this little machine bends to you and to your needs. So you stop looking at menus or trying to learn them, you just talk at it and then it will understand what you're trying to say. But in that very same press release on that exact same day, Apple has released one other thing. iMessage. And hold that thought, it might seem irrelevant, but these two products were not just born on the same morning, they grew together, but only one of them is still recognizable today. You can take a guess on which one of the two that is. And Phil Schiller's line on that press release is one that I keep going back to. So he says, while our competitors try to imitate iPhone with a checklist of features, only iPhone can deliver these breakthrough innovations. Competitors imitating with a checklist of features. Remember that sentence. And here is Siri in iOS 27.
Siri app makes it easy to revisit an existing conversation or kick off a new one. And when you open it, you can see an overview of your conversational history, which is synced privately with iCloud. So you can start chatting with Siri on your iPhone, pick up where you left off on your iPad, and wrap up on your Mac.
A dedicated app. Inside it, a grid or a list of your past conversations, each one saved and tappable. There's a search bar across the bottom, and next to it is a new chat button where you can upload images and documents. And once you say the name of Siri, you get that cool animation coming down from your dynamic island. And then the more you converse with it, if you pull down on that dynamic island, then you'll get basically an iMessage thread. Now let's go back to what I just walked you through and let's ask where each piece came from. Saved items from a browsable grid, that's photos or Safari bookmarks. A search bar over your own history, that's mail. A new chat button that opens a fresh conversation with file upload, ChatGPT, or basically any AI chatbot. Typing instead of talking, that's the very thing that voice was supposed to abolish. And the conversation view is the other product that Apple announced back in 2011. So 15 years of work on this assistant, and the answer was a checklist of features imitated from competitors. Almost every other chatbot that was ever shipped, wrapped around the messaging app that Apple has already had. So I'd say Phil Schiller kind of called it, but I don't think he meant it that way. But hey, it's working. And fine, voice needed a screen. I'll defend that. You can't really skim a conversation that you had out loud, and you can't scroll back to check for something that we already asked for, and if it mishears 1 in 14 words that you say, you have to say all 14 words all over again. So a window fixes all of that. Great. So the question isn't whether Siri should have a window, it's whether this is one. Because start with the archive. Every conversation you have gets saved into that grid. And Macworld's reviewer, who spent a week doing basically nothing else, found that Siri does not actually read them. There's no memory between conversations. It doesn't learn your tone, it doesn't carry anything forward. It doesn't consult with the chats sitting in its own app. Although this may change in future releases. So, for now at least, the history is for you, it's not for Siri. So here's some counter arguments. Viticci from MacStories had similar frustrations with the lack of history and memory and all that stuff. But his framing is that this is how Apple always works. Everyone else builds their products for power users first and then they let it trickle down. ChatGPT is a bit of an outlier as they built it for consumers first and then they added code and all of that extra bells and whistles. But usually companies build it for power users and then they make it trickle down to average consumers. Apple has always done it the other way around. They start at the consumer, keep it simple, and then refine it upward. So by that reading, a stripped down version where you can only chat and upload a few files, this is not a failure on Apple Siri AI. This is the method that Apple has been working with this entire time, and it's a method that actually has a track record in winning. And Macworld goes further. Their headline is "The new Siri is ChatGPT for people who hate AI," but they mean it as a compliment. Siri AI does not use emojis or fakes its warmth, nor does it ask you follow-up questions. It just answers it with control from your phone. So the reviewer in Macworld preferred it. And because of this very control that I talked about, Siri can do things that no chatbot can. Because Apple owns that operating system. So when you ask it to set a reminder, it has history of all of your reminders. If you ask it to text that contact, it knows what the history of that conversation is with that contact. If you ask it to run an action, great, it has access to all of the Siri automations you might have worked on. And all of that is in one breath, and that makes almost every other AI chatbot almost unable to compete with Apple. And that's why you get all of these headlines on YouTube of YouTubers saying Apple has won the AI race, even though they came really late. And that right there is Apple's staple on AI, is the accessibility and the context, along with the advertised privacy, which I would take with a grain of salt for now. Because I approach these things with guilty until proven innocent. So they are leading this AI race even when it's not completely theirs. As you may know, this January, Apple signed a multi-year deal with Google. And Apple's own words in that joint statement was the following: the next generation of Apple Foundation models will be based on Google Gemini's models. Apple decided that Google's technology was, quote, the most capable foundation for them. So the model isn't completely Apple's anymore, which leaves the interface to be the entire product, or most of the product anyway. And that's the one thing that is truly Apple's, and that's the one thing that is done brilliantly. So overall, I think Siri is headed to the right direction, whether they rented their model or not. I think it has levels of access that is unmatched by any other AI out of the gate, and I think they are really being careful on what they use AI for now anyway. And to top all of this off, this is packaged by that desirable Apple design language that makes it consumer friendly and instantly looks 10 times better than its competitors. So I'll start using Siri almost every day to ask it about some of the emails I received, or ask it about things that I've said and I may have forgotten that I've said, and search my files in an actually useful way. So if this video was your sort of thing, I do design world commentary videos like this every couple weeks or something, and that's the channel. So the button is below, and unlike Siri, there's no ethical questions around pressing it. Apple pulled the same move on its own design language last year. They shipped the vision, then handed you a dial to quietly turn it down. So that's a video right there. But also, there's another video on how Apple's most iconic designer designed one of Ferrari's least iconic cars, yet it sold out completely in about a month. And that's the video right there. And I'll see you in the next one.